One of the most misleading things that I hear all the time is how everybody loves succulents because they just find them so easy to take care of. They find them so low maintenance. But that's not what I'm hearing. What I hear is people saying, oh, I love this plant and this plant and this plant, but I stay away from succulents because I cannot keep them alive. Like, that's what I'm hearing when I chat with people. And to be honest, that was me too when I first started getting into plants and plant collecting. I could not keep a succulent alive, like, to save my life. So today I'm going to make a beautiful succulent garden that's not only gorgeous, but survivable. And I'll show you the mistakes that are actually killing most people's plants without them realizing it.
This Plant Care 101 video is brought to you by Wild & Son, now part of the rePotme family. They make it so easy to get beautiful, healthy plants delivered right to your door. Wild & Son has been one of the leading growers of peonies, irises, and daylilies in the country since 1885, with dozens of award-winning varieties. And now they're offering even more, including the beautiful succulents that I'll be planting today. Check out the link in my description and use my code Ashley10 for 10% off your first order.
Here are the supplies that I'm using to create this survivable succulent garden, and I'm going to go into more detail on why I've chosen all of these things because it's really key. The first one being a 12-inch shallow bowl with a drainage hole. Super important drainage hole. Then I've chosen some different succulents from Wild & Sons. I ordered them, they arrived absolutely beautiful. I am partnered with Wild & Sons, as you just saw, and they're so pretty. I'm excited. I think this yellow one is my absolute favorite. Then we need a super well draining soil mixture, like so important. Talk more about that. I'm also going to be using systemic granules to prevent pests. And then I'll be using this as a top dressing, which are just some like white rocks. So the first mistake I see a lot of people make is choosing the wrong type of pot for their succulents. I cannot tell you how difficult it was to find a shallow pot with a drainage hole. So drainage holes are super important for succulents because succulents hate sitting in soggy soil, and the only way for the water to get out is through a drainage hole. However, I think a lot of these pots are being sold without drainage holes because I see information out there all the time on succulent care to just put rocks in the bottom of the pot, which I get in theory, but unless you're a really super like advanced plant parent, succulent caretaker, the chances of making a mistake and giving that plant too much water that it like overfills on the rocks and then goes into the soil and then causes root rot on the plant is so high versus just getting a pot with drainage holes. And if you can't find one, you can easily drill holes into the pot. The other thing is to get a shallow one specifically for succulents because the root system's usually really small on succulents. And if there's way too much soil compared to the root ball, then usually the soil is going to become overly saturated with water because the roots aren't going to be able to absorb all that moisture. So yeah, just choose a nice shallow pot, and you want the pot to be 1 to 2 inches bigger than the root ball. So that usually ends up being a pretty small pot for succulents. They don't need a lot of excess soil. So for this one, because we're doing a succulent garden, I can't really go 1 to 2 inches bigger than the root ball. So hopefully that clears up some information on choosing the right size pot and why that is so important. And I see a lot of people have like succulents sitting in cover pots as well. Like the nursery pot will have drainage holes, but then it's sitting in like a really cute cover pot. And people will water their succulent while it's sitting in that cover pot that doesn't have drainage holes. Usually cover pots don't. But that succulent's still sitting in water in the cover pot, and that's another really easy way to cause root rot. So you just want to make sure that that's not happening. So the next mistake I see people make all the time is the type of soil that they're using. Most succulent deaths are blamed on overwatering when really it's just that the soil is retaining too much moisture. There's a really easy soil recipe that you can use. You can either make your own soil or you could buy a customized soil blend, but you want to use specifically a cactus and succulent soil. You don't want to use anything that says like standard potting mix or anything like that. It's just going to hold on to way too much moisture. Maybe a 30% potting mix to hold on to some moisture, but then the rest you want it to be super chunky substrates that are going to make that soil well draining, like perlite, pumice, Sand is a really good one. So you want it to look something like this. You can see that there's lots of really good bits. There's like pumice in here, all sorts of good stuff, rocks, there's sand, there's even like a little bit of orchid bark, although you want to go sparing on orchid bark. But you can see that there is some potting mix mixed in there to help retain moisture because succulents need a good drink. Using the correct kind of soil was something that I really didn't understand at all when I first started getting into plants. I did not understand how important it is. And I struggled with root rot. Like I said, I really struggled with succulents, understandably. And it wasn't just my succulents, it was like a lot of my tropical plants I struggled with getting root rot. And then once I switched to really good soil, it just made a world of difference. You can see how like shallow the root system is. If I had a really deep pot, there would be so much excess soil. And you don't want to put the soil too high. You want to just make sure it's at the base of the plant. You want to remove any dead leaves. This one's really cute, that can go there. I'm just allowing a couple inches between each one of the succulents because I want to make sure that there's room for them to grow. Let's see which one we think would look best. There's this one, but I think I'm gonna go with this one because it has like that really pretty red. Forgot to tell you names in case you want to order any of these. This one is the Gold Nugget. This one, it has the cool little like cobwebby type things on it. This one is called Forest Frost. This beautiful green one is Ruby Heart because it has like little red on the tips. This one has a lot of purple and it's called Bronco. Wild and Sun also had the option to get like some assorted varieties of hen and chicks, and it comes in like a bag of 6. And I didn't think that I would actually use it for this video, but I think it'll look actually really nice in this garden. There's just a couple little spots that I think it would look really nice. Look how cute that is with the little ones. I think I'm gonna put one here and one here as well. All right, so they're all planted up, and this isn't the end. There's still more that I'm going to do. I don't think it's necessarily well known that succulents deal with pests just as much as any other plants that we deal with. And I think because succulents are so different than a lot of other tropical plants, people don't really know what to do when it comes to pests, so they just like throw them away. But there's a lot we can do for pests. So that's why I like to use systemic granules for my succulents. Now this is toxic to pets, so you just want to keep that in mind. But what this does, it has an active ingredient which makes the succulents toxic to pests. So this thing works so great. The only thing it doesn't help with are spider mites, which I don't see my succulents really dealing with spider mites a lot. But if you do see that, then use insecticidal soap, which I don't have any on hand, but it's just a spray that you spray on the leaves and it gets rid of any like residual insects on the leaves. So insecticidal soap and systemic granules is like a winning combo, not just for my succulents, but also my cacti, also for my like really beautiful tropical plants. Now, don't put this into your watering can. You want to put this into the soil. It does have exact measurements on the back. I just usually eyeball it. If it does get on the leaves of your plant, it's not going to damage those leaves, but you do just for the sake of the plant, like you don't really want stuff on the leaves. I've ordered some white rocks as a top dressing. Now aesthetically, it looks really nice, but it also helps to prevent fungus gnats because fungus gnats like to lay their eggs on the top layer of soil, and it's hard for them to kind of get to the soil when there are a bunch of rocks on it. The white rocks as a top dressing just really makes such a big difference on the aesthetics. Not to mention, like I said, it has the benefits of preventing fungus gnats. Yes, succulents are drought tolerant, but this is only because they store a lot of water in their leaves. That's why their leaves are so thick. But they run out of water just like every other plant, and you don't really want to push them to the point that the leaves are all puckered up and dried out. You want to wait until the soil is completely dry before you water. Now that can be kind of difficult to figure out, especially when you're dealing with something like this. This is a really heavy pot, even when it's not watered. So it's gonna be hard for me to pick it up to tell. I can't really stick my finger in there so much to like tell if it needs to be watered or not. So for most of my plants, I don't need to use a moisture meter, but for this one, I will definitely be using a moisture meter. They're really inexpensive. You can find them all over online or in, at different stores. And you just put it into the soil, and then it will tell you if it's dry, if it's moist, or if it's wet. So for succulents, you want to wait until it's dry to give it a good drink. And then once it says that it's dry, you want to thoroughly soak your succulents. This is another mistake that I see made a lot, is that even when the soil is dry and people go to water it, is that they don't give the succulents enough water. They just give like a tiny bit of water. So now that we have a super well draining soil, we have a pot with drainage holes, we don't have way too much soil for the size of the root systems for these succulents, we can give this plant or this pot a really good drenching. So you want to soak this plant. First, you want to make sure the soil is dry, and then you want to take it to the sink or somewhere, and you just want to like give it such a good drink. It's going to be draining out pretty rapidly, and you just want to really give this plant, like I can't express enough, you want to give it a good soak. And then once that's done, do not water again until the soil is 100% completely dry. You want to make sure that the water is draining out super fast like this. If it's not, then something is wrong. The next common mistake people make is not giving their succulents enough light. I don't understand why they're sold as like low light tolerant. In their natural habitats, they are getting a lot of sun. So you want to put these plants in a really bright area. And that's going to help these plants not just survive, but to thrive. They definitely need a lot of bright light. Now, some succulents can be prone to sunburn if they're getting really, really blasting bright afternoon light and they haven't like adapted to that quite yet. You might see some sunburn, but morning light is not going to be an issue usually because it comes down to like the UV and how high on the UV index the sun is that day. And typically, it's not going to be a big problem, especially if they're indoors. Like this would be great for outdoors too. So if this is outdoors and it's getting blasted all day with sun and it's getting super bright afternoon light and these plants aren't acclimated to that yet, then you might see that they get a little bit sunburned. But in general, if it's like indoors in your house, these plants will do great with a lot of really bright light. So I'm placing it here right in front of a window where I know it's going to get beautiful morning light and some afternoon sun. It has a great view of the sky. I am in Michigan, so it's going to be a struggle, especially in the winter. So I do have a lamp that's right next to where the succulent garden's going to go, and I can pop in a supplemental grow light in there if I need to in the winter. Another mistake that I see people make is not fertilizing their succulents. Now, succulents don't need fertilizing as regularly or as intensely as other plants, especially the tropical plants that have a ton of like dense foliage, but they need some fertilizing, especially during the growing months. So choose a cactus and succulent fertilizer. Make sure it says it's for cactus and succulents, and start at half strength, especially like as you're coming into the growing months, which is spring and summer are the growing months. And then if your succulents seem to respond well to that, I would just mildly fertilize like once a month or something like that during the growing months, and then taper off in the fall. And in the winter months, you won't need to fertilize then. If you're noticing your succulents are getting very leggy, there's a lot of room in between the leaves, then that means that it's not getting enough light. Another suggestion I have is to actually like rotate your succulent. That's another mistake that people make, is they don't rotate their succulents. So it will start to like kind of grow in one direction. And especially something like this, rotating this regularly is what I'm going to do to keep it looking balanced. So there you go. This is a succulent garden that is survivable, and we've set this plant up for success. Now it's going to be up to me to basically, at this point, it's going to be pretty low maintenance. I just need to make sure that I'm watering when the soil's dry and giving it a fertilizing, every once in a while, and then rotating it because I'm set it in a spot where it should be getting enough light. But all in all, it's really the setting it up, I think, that is going to make sure that your succulents are set up for success. And feel free to leave any of your tips and tricks. I hope this video was helpful. I absolutely love how the succulent garden turned out. It is so beautiful. And, you know, those are also some of the common mistakes that you can look out for as well. Please let me know what your tips and tricks are for succulents. We have a very knowledgeable plant community, and I have lots of other plant care videos that I've done for not only house plants, but outdoor plants as well. So subscribe if you want to see more planty videos in your newsfeed. And we also have a great community on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. All right, I hope you have a wonderful rest of the day, and I get to see you soon. Bye.